Hey everybody, Joe Passion Unchained here. This video, I'm going to talk about how life is meant to be enjoyed, not just survived. And this is a core belief that I have that helps me through life and helps me make the right decisions. Because sometimes I'm tempted to make decisions that are about survival, but that take away from my enjoyment. Like maybe taking a job opportunity that's not right for me, or meeting up with a friend that isn't really a good influence on my energy because I feel like I have to have that connection to survive, or something like that. There's a lot of things that I do that that are influenced by this idea that life isn't just meant to be survived, it's meant to be enjoyed. So, a while ago, we as humans had to fight for our survival. We had to make sure we had enough food, which wasn't guaranteed. We had to make sure we were safe from wild animals and other tribes that were out to kill us and hurt us. Nowadays, we have the luxury of not worrying about those things. I mean, we still do sometimes, some of us, and depending on if you're in a country that is in the midst of war, some places in the Middle East, of course, and some places in Africa, and some other parts of the world. I know Ukraine and Russia, sometimes they get pretty heated, and if you're in those parts of the world, or you're in a place where you're persecuted, there is still persecution around the world, then my deepest condolences. This does not apply to you. This applies to people in more affluent parts of the world, much of Europe, not all of Europe, much of Europe, the U.S., for like almost pretty much all the U.S., a lot of Canada, a good part, not all of Mexico, but a good part of Mexico, as long as you're not getting, with the cartel and getting in conflict there. And parts of South America, same deal, like there's some places that aren't so safe, but as long as you're staying out of trouble, you don't really have to worry about your safety. And you definitely don't have to worry about wild animals. There are some parts of India where there's still tigers around, etc., but most of the world, you don't have to worry about wild animals. And you don't have to worry about tribes. You might have to worry about gang violence in some cities, but again, for most of us watching this video, we're not worried about our physical safety on a day-to-day basis. And even if we are worried about maybe our rent not being paid, still, in most of the Western world, I know in America in particular, if you are hungry and you're worried about not having food, it's not really a risk. There's a lot of ways you can get food, a lot of programs to get you free food, a ton of shelters all over the place, and food banks, etc. And if you're in need, you can get the food you need. So you're not going to go hungry. It's almost, unless you're trying to go hungry or you go out on a backpacking trip and completely unprepared and just completely mess up, you're not going to die of starvation here in the US. We don't have those dangers anymore, which is amazing. So our mind and our brain has evolved millennia where we had to worry about something for our survival, right? And nowadays, for most of the time, as of very recently, as of only in the last few hundred years, if that, we don't have to worry about our survival that much. That means the worry's still there, but there's not so much of a reason for it. But that said, because we don't have to worry about it, the purpose of life has evolved. And this is something that has happened a lot. And this is something that, like if you go thousands of years ago, slavery was normal and was expected for a certain class of citizens, depending on where you are in the world. A lot of complications to how history works, depending on where, when, etc. But for a class of people in much of the world, for most of human history, slavery was expected, and it was expected that you would be slaves, your kids would be slaves, your kids' kids would be slaves, your kids' kids' kids would be slaves, etc. And it was just accepted. It was part of the deal. Now, in the mid-1800s, that started changing around the world around the same time. At first, no new slave trade was allowed in much of the world in the early/mid-1800s, and then later, slavery was outlawed in most of the world. Now, of course, slavery still exists today, but it's illegal, and there's more slaves than there ever were today, but that's mostly because there's tons more people than there were. So the percentage of, I don't know this, but I'd imagine the percentage of people who are slaves nowadays is a lot less. It's illegal, and while it still happens, it's underground, and it's not something that that is sanctioned by anyone and is persecuted by everybody. So the accepted quality of life made a huge jump in the 1800s. But also even since then, even since the antibiotics, right? Before then, it was accepted that if you got cut deeply, maybe you were in a duel and you got like nicked somewhere in your body, it wasn't even a vital organ, you probably would get sepsis and die. It was just normal. I mean, heck, I think in the 1700s, before then, there's a group of doctors who would dissect cadavers and then deliver babies, and then the mothers would die of sepsis. They would get infected and die, and they didn't realize, except for this one doctor who realized that it was they didn't know about germs, but it was probably, I think he said like the essence of the dead or something like that, or dead matter, dead essence. He didn't know what to call it, but he realized that the matter from the dead people was making the mothers sick. Now we know that it's bacteria and viruses and all that stuff. That's what's in and on the dead bodies, and you have to sanitize your hands. And he found out that if he dipped his hands in a dilute bleach solution, the mothers wouldn't die as often from the same thing, and kind of erased it pretty much. So that's pretty much what we do now. But before then, if you needed to give birth and you went to a hospital, there was a huge chance that you would die. And even after that, there's a huge chance you would die for other reasons, because we weren't as good in hospitals as we are now. Now, there's still some chance of miscarriage and of death of the mother, unfortunately, but it's a lot less than before. The reason I'm saying all these things is because the quality of life goes up over time. Yes, there are problems, always. Yes, there are things that need to be solved for humanity to be in a good place. But those things the things that we're solving now are better than the things that we're solving before. We're not worried about our safety here in the U.S. Sure, there are, it would be nice for, it depends what, economics are a complicated issue, but labor laws are at a place in the U.S. where it's difficult to get overworked and unpaid. Sure, I guess you could make a good argument that the minimum wage is way too low. I'm not going to get into that because that's a more complicated situation about whether the minimum wage should be raised to a large extent, like doubled essentially. Some people love it, some people hate it. It's not the point of this video. The point of this video is the laws are such that if you work overtime, you have to get paid for that. And there's mandatory breaks that they have to give you or your employer's violating the law, right? So what that means is you as a worker has protections. Now, in the early 1900s, they could overwork a kid and pay him $2 an hour, and you could overwork anybody, 60 hours a week, $2 an hour, and no harnesses when you're working on a skyscraper. People fell to the desk all the time in the industrial age. You don't have that now. The quality of life is going up, and it keeps going up and up and up. And it's sometimes it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, but it goes up in general. And what that shows us is that now the next frontier is, how do we enjoy our lives? How do we build a life that is immensely enjoyable? We're no longer trying to figure out how do we build a life that we survive till we have kids and die. That's a really animalistic thinking. Most of the world, we don't have to think that way. We can think, we're going to survive. Our baseline is we're going to survive for a while because of what's available to us, the immense amount of food and resources available to us. But how do we enjoy life? How do we live and build a life that we enjoy? How do we find fulfillment? And that's why a lot of millennials are now thinking, like, a lot of, the older generation might look at the millennials and be like, well, you're so spoiled. Like, why are you thinking of these things? Why are you thinking why are you asking the question, like, I want good work-life balance, and why aren't you asking, like, how do I be of service to your company, which is legitimate criticism. I think it's important figure out how you can be of service to other people, whether you're a business owner or you're an employee. You need to make sure that you're giving to the people that give you your sustenance, your money. But at the same time, there's a good reason that nowadays we're thinking about that. People my age and my generation are thinking about, how can I enjoy life? I want to be a digital nomad. Like, I don't want to go into a company that's just going to work me full time until I'm 60 and retire, because that's not fulfilling for me. Because we've thought about that. We've had that mindset. We don't have to think that way anymore. We don't have to think that way we can have our cake and eat it too. It's not a dichotomy anymore. We have the resources we need to build a life for ourselves. For everybody can build a life for themselves that is immensely fulfilling and enjoyable. So this is a hugely important philosophy for me in particular, and for the people on this channel. I mean, if you believe that you need to put survival over enjoyment and maximization of productivity over work-life balance, then you're probably not liking the channel, and you probably aren't watching this video. And this channel isn't going to jive with you. Because this channel is about how do you build a life you enjoy, which, yes, means making a lot of money so you can do the things you want to do and buy your time back and have your freedom of time. But it also means not being productive for productivity's sake. You be productive because your productivity helps you with a goal. You don't be productive because you want to be productive. And if productivity makes you happy, then be productive on things that you like, which is still you prioritizing things you like. Like for me, if I had all the money coming in, when I have all the money coming in that I want and that I need, and I don't need to do anything for it, like investments or businesses that are on automatic, like courses, etc., I'm still going to be doing a lot of crafts and artwork, and I'm going to be super productive traveling the world, creating content and making artwork, because that's what I love doing, right? I'm not going to never be productive. It's just I'm going to be productive in the things I want to be productive in. So I'm not saying productivity is bad. In fact, I love productivity. I'm going to be productive no matter how much money I have coming in. But I would have choice, and I will have choice over what I'm productive in. So that's the difference. I'm not saying productivity is bad. I'm saying productivity for productivity's sake is not prioritizing enjoyment. And that's the value that I have, is life is not about survival. Life is about enjoyment. I hope this cleared things up for you and helped you a little bit build a life you love. Maybe it clarified something for you. Maybe it helped you make a decision that you're trying to make right now. If it did, let me know in the comments what that was about, because I'm really curious. I want to help people live a life they love, because that's important to me, and that's why I have this channel. Also, I like doing this channel too, so a little bit of selfishness in it makes me enjoy my life more. So yeah, subscribe if it helped you, share with a friend, and like this video, because then YouTube's like, yo, this video is awesome, I'm gonna show it to more people. And without further ado, go build a life you love.